Carolina's Field, Forest, and Water. A closer look at agriculture in South Carolina and conversations between the current and future leaders of agriculture in the Palmetto State and experts from across America. Presented by the students of the South Carolina Governor's School for Agriculture at John De La Howe.
Welcome to this edition of Carolina's Field, Forest, and Water. My name is Gray Gardner, and this is J.C. Chandler, our student body president. On today's edition, we are joined by State Representative Patrick Haddon and Macon Atkinson, who's the reporter for the Post Courier. Representative Haddon serves in South Carolina House of Representatives and has been a longtime advocate of our mission here at the South Carolina Governor's School for Agriculture. Representative Haddon and Macon, thank you so much for joining us today. Definitely agriculture is a big topic, I know, for all of us, especially, being that the largest industry in South Carolina. How do you, Patrick Haddon, how do you think we ensure that strength of our state agriculture in the government sector on your side?
On our side, we have to continue to build relationships. I tell everybody that I come in contact with, any FFA group, 4-H group that was here recently, it's all about relationships and proving that, that $52 billion industry is worth keeping for sustainability purposes. Number one, because we have to be able to feed ourselves. But number two, we have to make that sustainable for the next generation, 2, 3, 4, 10 generations down the road. And that's why I'm so excited about Governor's School here at De La Howe, because you guys play an immense part in that next generation. And J.C., being a ninth generation farmer, completely understands where I'm going with this, because if we don't have that bench, then that's going to stop. And so from a state standpoint, we have to make sure the funding's there. But on the other side of that, we have to make sure we have the students prepared to step into those roles of those that are retiring or passing away. That's where the next generation comes in. So that's my lead in to saying how much you guys matter in the state agriculture industry in South Carolina.
Yeah, I know we both were at the State House with our FFA chapter last week for Legislative Appreciation Day at the State House. I know I learned a lot, especially, about the new pieces of legislation. So brief us down, what are the current legislative pieces for ag right now in the General Assembly?
So last year, if you look back and you look at the state as a whole, we have lost somewhere between 285 and 300,000 acres of ag land, not just fallow land, working ag land. And that's from 2001 to somewhere in that area. And so last year or the year before, we were thinking, well, why doesn't the state look at this as an important piece? Because if we're looking at it from a sustainability and conservation, why doesn't the state have a bigger part in that? And so we wrote legislation that said that the State Conservation Bank, which is a very important part of our state, of protecting valuable land that could be harmed in some way that we want to protect, why not say that we're going to protect working farmlands? And so with that, we wrote legislation that says that if you get 50% of your income off that land, and there's some other qualifications, but that's the biggest one, that you could form a trust, then apply to the Conservation Bank to sell a portion or all of your development rights, up to 50% of the value. And so we had incredible voting support on that. It went to the Senate, and great support, voted unanimously over there. And so right now we're just waiting for it to be ratified and signed by the governor. We also have a young farmer and rancher loan program that we filed this year that we'll probably end up taking up next year. But what that does is that puts into effect part of that conservation portion of it. It says that anybody that I think is under the age of 40 with 3 or 4 years of experience can get a loan up to $500,000, and it's no interest for 30 years. But if you look at the input cost, I mean, y'all know what it's looking like.
It's ridiculous.
It is.
It keeps going up for some reason.
It does. Every year it keeps going up. So why can't we go ahead and help the young farmer and ranchers to go ahead and buy equipment or buy land? If they buy land, that land automatically gets put into an easement. because all I want to do is protect land for the next generation and help you guys with your markets and sustainability and all that. But if we don't have the land, you're not going to be able to do anything. So we've got that bill. We also are working on a piece right now with Superintendent Ellen Weaver, in that there are some portions of the state that have FFA groups and 4-H groups that if they're off doing part of their CDEs or some type of project outside the school, they don't get unexcused absences for that. And so I filed a bill to prevent that. But working with Superintendent Ellen Weaver, her office has been great. We're trying to work through that without a law. I mean, who wants to just add another law? If we can get it done without laws, that's great. And then we've got a couple others, but those were the two big ones of trying to set aside that land, because a lot of your producers and farmers and landowners, they don't want to sell, but sometimes they get circled around and pushed. And what we're just saying is we want to give another option. We're all about property rights. You can do whatever you want with your land, but we don't want you to get in a position where you're getting pushed and pushed and pushed and you have no option. So this, and Farm Bureau has stepped in. They created a land trust this year, and it was, or last year rather, late last year. And I believe there's some 30 or 40 farms that are interested in doing it. And there's all these other land trusts, Upstate Forever and such. So I've been incredibly happy about the height of excitement on the easements, because there's a lot of questions of what easements mean and what they don't mean. To me, it means that land can stay farming. It can be passed down. It can be sold, but it's always going to be farming. And to me, that's the beauty of the whole part of it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think that's definitely important. I know specifically, where I live inside Clinton, South Carolina, near PC, a lot of that land's starting to get developed, and we see it everywhere now. Everything's getting developed.
Yes.
Just something quick and everything. I know, especially with sustainability, we're trying to do that on our campus as well with our new meats lab coming up. How do y'all think you on the government side can kind of help us with that? We talk about sustainability, and we want, especially for our campus, we want that to kind of be a stable for South Carolina, to teach people about different things. But how do y'all think y'all can play into that?
Well, from my side, I'm working real hard just because of the position I hold, there's some bills that we can do, but trying to put markets together and protect markets, because, you're raising cattle or hogs or whatever, there's always a market for different types, whether it's grass-fed or permaculture, whatever, silviculture, there's always a market. So from my standpoint, I'm trying to find ways to put people in front of other people that sells in that type of market. It's one market's not going to be, one market for all. We've got to be able to split and meet that goal. I had a meeting yesterday with two different cattle groups about how do we make South Carolina raised beef? How do we raise that standard? And so we had these two groups coming together in that room, and we come to a good decision on that about how to make South Carolina beef. You've got the SC grown, so we're trying to make SC grown beef, and when that gets out there, you're going to be able to get a premium for that. So for me, it's all about how to build these new markets. And there's probably some markets that we don't even know that's around a corner. Like for you guys, when y'all start and get out, this may be something totally different. But I do know right now there are statewide markets, there's local markets that you can get into. But as far as sustainability is concerned, that's got to be, for me, it's an individual. I mean, some farmers are really good at sustainability and trying to sustain their farms for the next generations, and then some others need help. Because I know some farmers that just, it's not, they don't want to think about it. They don't want to think about that next step. But we all better start thinking about that. Because the developer, and I don't have a problem with developers. Developers have no problems with the next step. Seems like we're the ones that's on the side that doesn't get our act together sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. It's definitely been a hot topic with all the things going on. Ms. Atkinson, I know you're a reporter for Post and Courier. Why don't you kind of talk us through, what your day-to-day job is, especially, with rural communities, rural towns, and, how kind of the different things with reporting on agribusiness as well.
Yeah, so my job is really cool because I get to spend time in parts of the state that tend to maybe be overlooked or not represented as much in the media. Obviously we have a problem with local news being in decline. There are not a lot of local newspapers anymore. And so my job was kind of created to try and help address that and just to spend time in some of these rural communities, understand what's important to people, understand some of the forces that are shaping how people think about politics, about life, about business, whatever it may be. And so it's been a lot of fun. And just like Patrick was saying, a lot of my job is about developing relationships with people, getting to know people, listening, asking questions. I spend a lot of time in the car. I drive quite a bit for my job, but it's great. And I've talked to Patrick some about some of his agriculture bills. I've spent some time went and spent a day on a farm in the PD with a tobacco farmer for a series that I worked on. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I know, especially the building relationships we've talked to, I know here we talked a lot about that, networking and making those, connections and that kind of thing, especially with the ag side of it. It's really important for us, getting out of high school, going to college. What are some, maybe tips or tricks of building those relationships with people? I know, especially, being in rural settings, it sometimes can be hard in that way. What are kind of some tips?
It can be a blessing and a curse because I think people in smaller communities, everybody knows somebody, and that can be really, really helpful sometimes. I think it's important to just be yourself and then understand what's important to you. And it's good to have a sense of direction and thinking about what you're curious about. But I think just thinking about what do you want to explore, being curious and open-minded. And I think everybody, I'm a journalist, so I think everybody has a story to tell to some extent, or someone has something interesting about them. And I think that can serve you well in building good connections and just being a good listener. Just being extroverted and friendly helps too.
Yes. Well, let me chime in on that one as far as relationships and as far as like state government relationships. I think I told you guys when y'all were on the State House complex, and I told many groups, it's all about relationship building there, trying to get things done, trying to be effective. You're going to have always 2, 3, 4 different sides to everything, and we go in and we have very hard-fought debates on the floor, but that doesn't define those relationships that we have. Our relationships are me working with a lot of my Republican and a lot of my Democrat colleagues to try to get things done so that, one, it's great for the entire state, but we can't do that without relationships. And I spent a lot of my time trying to build those relationships, and Macon is absolutely right about being true to your core principles, and being friendly, knowing what the end goal is. The end goal for me is all the things that we talked about earlier about ag, but you can't get to the end result by not having those relationships. And that is, I can't express how big a deal that is. And the support that this school has in the General Assembly is because of the relationships. And it's mainly because early on we had a couple legislators built relationships with your president, and here we are. And so, that's key. So I always when I talk to y'all are not super young, but is build relationships, but work together where you can, but don't turn people off if you don't see eye to eye with them on certain things, because today you may not need their vote, you may not need their opinion, but tomorrow you might need them, and vice versa. They may not need you today. Y'all might disagree, but the next issue, y'all see eye to eye on something, and y'all can work together on something and get something majorly accomplished, like that land bill. and it's all because of relationships.
Which I think mean here on campus, we have a good practice with this. We are able to build the relationships because we are away from our parents. So I think this campus is a great opportunity to start learning those skills. Like, I mean, here on campus, we are all like-minded people, but, I may have a different way of raising or working my cattle than somebody else, and we may not get along on one aspect of it, and then we turn around and we start talking about another aspect, and we do it the same way. So I feel like maybe this campus is a great opportunity for these students.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And like, Macon talked about, especially in small towns, it can sometimes be hard to get your name out there. When, in the town I live in, I'm not from that area. I'm not from this area at all. I'm not really from a typical ag background growing up. So definitely building those relationships has been a big thing, for me here too. Meeting people like J.C., who really have a strong ag background, and Dr. Cowan and Mr. Bauman that, have helped kind of cultivate that, being able to network with people in that way too, which I'm very thankful I was able to come here and to be able to do things like this.
Well, the other thing of that is there's so many different types of agriculture.
Yes.
I mean, there's grass-fed, there's finished. I mean, then you talk about hogs, forest, and houses. I mean, there's so many different people doing different ag. The way I look at it is we've got to have them all. I mean, there's positives and negatives, all this stuff, but the tent, I would say, for ag is so big, and we need everybody because the way we move forward is not by limiting farms. It's about helping them grow.
Yes, sir.
And protecting them and strengthening them. So looking at it from, well, they don't do like I do, so I'm not gonna have a relationship with them. Well, guess what? The next time you have a storm or a hurricane come through, I bet you'll wish you had that neighbor.
Yes.
And just because they don't do what you do, I think that's a fallacy in some of our thinking.
Maybe we could also talk about some of the forces that are shaping farming and agribusiness in South Carolina right now. Some of the challenges too. I know Patrick's probably pretty well acquainted. A lot of what I run into is the growth, like you were saying earlier, a lot of development.
There's definitely a lot of development. And I know we talk about South Carolina, ag is the leading industry, but I think also some people don't realize the tourism and agritourism side of that. Because, there's a lot of people in South Carolina. It seems like, we grow by the thousands every day, honestly. That's what it feels like sometimes. How do we find that balance, you think? I know it's been hard for us, but where's kind of the balance, you think, between obviously our state growing, but also, trying to protect that farmland with the land bill that y'all are trying to pass?
Well, if you can figure that one out, please let me know. I'm not in that's not my task to stop development. The only thing we can do is give options. And that's all I'm trying to do is give options. But I will say that, I think we're the third. There's states that most people are moving to. We're number third on that list. I think there's somewhere between 70 and 100 people that move here every day. And so we have the secret's out about South Carolina. I mean, people are moving to Charleston, Horry, the Midlands, Greenville. And, I think we're kind of behind the eight ball in protecting those farms. But we have such a high interest in that I think that over the next 10 years, we're going to see some change in that. We're going to see that green space. We're going to see those cows. Because I remember growing up, our family farm was in Abbeville, but I grew up in Greenville most of the time. And I know my bus route, I remember seeing the cows and the horses, and I go back there right now, and there's houses. And
especially in Greenville County.
Yes.
That's one of
and Woodruff Road.
Growing.
I remember when I worked for Bob Jones, the farm down there, it was 2 lanes, and we cut hay on both sides basically. And there was a real nice farm out there. We're at 5 Point, and he grew some of the best alfalfa hay. And then the next thing you know, that's gone. I mean, now it's completely commercialized. So I think finding a balance is not. I don't think the government's role. We can't come in and say you cannot do. We're going to leave that up to county and zoning and that sort of thing if the county has it. But in my role, I'm just trying to protect that farm if the farmer wants to protect it and give them that option. I don't think that we can get in and start telling people you can and can't do something with their land.
it's definitely a big thing, which is a good thing to have that option now. I feel like a lot of times, we feel, especially, being younger and, getting started into this, it's kind of hard to have that breakthrough. But now, y'all are being able to provide that other option, which I think is really amazing. And, it's good to, I think the reason, a big thing about, people moving down to the South and South Carolina especially is just because of that farmland or, because of how much ag we have down here. But I think that's also why it's so important to advocate, like y'all are doing at the State House and we're able to do for our own school, and what you're doing too. So, yeah, what do you think? Do you think it's kind of hard to advocate for agriculture, or do you think it's getting better in that aspect?
I think there's always some more that can be done. I think my job is really interesting because I can help shine a spotlight or provide a platform to discuss issues or bring a new angle to something that maybe has been overlooked. And we also provide accountability for state government and for local government and those people that are making those decisions that are shaping the future of agriculture. I think there are a lot of people at the table, but I think there's still a lot more work to be done. And I'm happy to be able to contribute to that with my job.
Well, relationships, sometimes government and journalists are on opposing sides sometimes.
Which they naturally kind of should be.
It really, you're part of that checks and balances.
Exactly.
And I appreciate that. But also the relationship is, I remember when we first talked,
Yep.
It was about the bill, and then next thing you know, you're put a spotlight on all this other ag stuff. So building relationships isn't just, government and a constituency, it's government journalism, because that is that can be a very good tool to have on a positive side. But then if we mess up, then you need to shine light on that as well, just as vigorous.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. So there's, some of my colleagues may not agree with that.
Oh, it's good. It can be beneficial too, because I talk to Patrick. I don't live on a farm. So, sometimes I'll text him or ask him, what are you hearing from other people? Or what are you guys talking about in the State House on a state level that I should know about and that can work into my coverage. So it can definitely be a helpful dynamic as well.
I think it's definitely good to have that, those checks and all that thing. And that's another thing, about the school that I love, is being able to have those relationships with both sides of this. But where do you think, especially as us, we're both getting near graduation, we got about 2 months left. Where do you think, young people and people that, are graduating can kind of fit into this this role, either, on the government side or, getting into journalism?
I think you guys are the future, and I'm very amazed every time I talk to people who are your age, because it's inspiring to see you guys are really well informed, and I just think that you're going to make a big difference. And I think that, you've learned from the past, and I think we'll be able to grow forward from the mistakes that I'm not that much older than you guys, but that our parents have made, or, I'm very optimistic about the future. And I think that you guys have the right perspective to make a difference. I know that's kind of a broad answer, but I think it's inspiring.
No, it is. It is very much so.
Well, I'm certainly a little older, but I'm like Macon. I have, when we see all the groups, when I go talk to FFA groups, and every time I leave a meeting, I get super excited. And then when FFA Day comes around and 4-H Day is Tuesday, it kind of gives you a shot in the arm. Like, this is why we're doing what we're doing, because I remember being in FFA for multiple years in high school and in college. Some of the best friends I had, some of the best advisors I had, some of the best teachers were always my ag teachers. And so those relationships carry throughout my life. But the future of it, I think it's wide open. I think the only limiting factor is your ability to have the desire to do it. Because if you have the desire to do anything, you can go after it and do it, especially in ag. I think, I was watching a podcast from a guy yesterday. He started off with a 1-row corn planter. And now, several years later, he'll say, it's not as big as he wants, but he's making a living off of it. And I'm thinking, man, that's a great life. And so I don't think there's anything limiting you, especially I can't imagine me doing this at 18 years old. That this was not something that I congratulate you on your maturity in this school, because I could not see myself doing this when I was in school. But
I do think that's why it's so important for me to write about these issues that we're talking about, for Patrick to, maybe craft legislation that addresses it, because you guys, we want you to be able to continue farming or continue doing whatever you want to do with agriculture and agribusiness. So,
yeah, well, we're definitely thankful for y'all joining us today, both Representative Haddon and, Ms. Atkinson. It's definitely an inspiration to know that, we have y'all's support through, all this we do, whether, bee farming or, whatever it is. We're definitely thankful for y'all's support through all of this and being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
That will definitely wrap up this edition of Carolina's Field, Forest, and Water. I would like to thank Representative Haddon and Ms. Atkinson for joining us today. My name is Gray Gardner, and this is my other co-host, J.C. Chandler, and I hope you will be joining us again for another farm visit on Carolina's Field, Forest, and Water.
Carolina's Field, Forest, and Water. A closer look at agriculture in South Carolina and conversations between the current and future leaders of agriculture in the Palmetto State and experts from across America. Presented by the students of the South Carolina Governor's School for Agriculture at John De La Howe. For more information on the South Carolina Governor's School for Agriculture, visit our website at delahowe.sc.gov.